Welcome to the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. This is, I think, the next to the last Sunday night in August 2020. We're on the cusp, ready to push through the doors into the Democrat National Convention. I've got some global news. Israel and the U.A.E. This dates back about a week, August 13th, from the Jewish News Service. Jewish and pro-Israel groups instantly applauded Israel and the United Arab Emirates for a deal on Thursday to normalize relations between the two countries. It's the first of its kind between Israel and a Middle Eastern country in more than 25 years. They're following Jordan and Egypt. The American Israel Public Affairs Committee called the development, quote, an historic breakthrough for peace and reconciliation in the Middle East, end of quote. Palestinian Authority leader Mahmoud Abbas immediately called for an urgent meeting with other Palestinian leaders. I'll bet he did. Spokesman Nabil Abu Ridena called the deal treason, saying it must be reversed. He called on other Arab states not to follow the U.A.E.'s lead at the expense of Palestinian rights. Now, walking around behind the curtain, at the end of June, al-Otaiba approached Jared Kushner and the White House envoy Avi Berkowitz with a proposal. The U.A.E. would agree to normalization with Israel in return for an Israeli announcement that West Bank annexation was off the table. Kushner liked the proposal. Berkowitz began attempting to lay some groundwork. The White House, of course, had its own reservations about annexation, which Berkowitz discussed with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in meetings over 3 days last June. Momentum grew. Kushner spoke on the phone several times with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed, they call him MBZ, the U.A.E.'s de facto ruler. He and Berkowitz had at least 24 meetings with Israeli Ambassador to Washington Ron Dermer and al-Otaiba. Several days ago, an agreement was reached in principle. It was kept secret. But the deal was finalized last Wednesday in a conference call between President Trump, Netanyahu, and MBZ. You saw the result late in the week on the news. You do understand, we talked about it, a storage facility blew up several weeks ago in Lebanon, killing almost 200 people and destroying tremendous property. The two explosions occurred at the port of the city of Beirut, the capital of Lebanon. The second explosion was extremely powerful, caused at least 171 deaths, 6,000 injuries, anywhere from $10 to $15 billion in property damage, left an estimated 300,000 people homeless. You can't count that high. The event was lit to about 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate, equivalent to about 1.2 kilotons of TNT. Nitrate, which had been confiscated by the Lebanese government from the abandoned ship MV Russos and then stored in the port without proper safety measures for 6 years. The explosion was detected by the United States Geological Survey as a seismic event of magnitude 3.3. It is considered to be one of the most powerful non-nuclear explosions in history. In its aftermath, protests erupted across Lebanon against the government for their failure to prevent the explosions, joining a larger series of protests that have been taking place in the country since 2019. On August 10th, 2020, Prime Minister Hassan Diab and the Lebanese cabinet resigned due to mounting political pressure that was exacerbated by this event. The storage facility was clearly a military stash of potential munition. Recently, there have been fires, explosions at Iran's largest nuclear enrichment facility in the city of Natanz, at the Shahid Medhaz Zargan power plant in the city of Avaz, in the oxygen factory in the town of something I can't pronounce, at a missile facility belonging to the Iran Revolutionary Guard, at the Tongguyan petrochemical plant, at the industrial complex near Mashhad, on an oil pipeline in Alvez, and at a power plant in Isfahan province. Also in July, a large fire broke out at a shipyard in a large southern Iranian port city. 70 people were injured following a chlorine gas leak at a petrochemical plant. An aluminum factory in the industrial city of Larnard caught fire, and another fire broke out at a petrochemical plant in Khuzestan province. Now, Dimi said that if Iran believes Israel was behind the Natanz attack, considered more serious since it targeted Iran's nuclear program, Iran, quote, will try to target Israel's nuclear infrastructure or something as important because they may not be able to get to an Israeli nuclear site on foot for a sabotage attack. This time they will definitely do something as soon as they figure things out. Talking about Iran. In the south, as it conducts its mission to defend southern Israeli communities and vital strategic sites, the Israeli Navy is engaged in a quiet arms race with Israel's adversaries in the Gaza Strip, namely Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. As the option of smuggling weapons through tunnels is vanishing for Gaza's terror factions, they increasingly turn to sea tracking attempts. As an interception of a weapon ship in February traveling from the Sinai Peninsula to Gaza illustrates. Our border defense is highly dynamic, we're told. We conduct daily situation assessments. Over in China, we see the end of Hong Kong's relatively free political system is no longer looming. It's here. So why does that matter? Well, the Chinese Communist Party is already wielding the new national security law it forced upon Hong Kong just over a month ago. And through the extraterritoriality enshrined in the new law, Beijing has signaled that its push against pro-democracy activism has gone global. This means that Hong Kong police have arrested top media and political figures, searched the offices of a major news organization, indicted overseas activists. On July 31st, Hong Kong authorities issued arrest warrants for 6 activists based abroad, including a U.S. citizen, for what they call incitement to secession and collusion with foreign forces. Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam also announced on July 31st that she would postpone the upcoming elections for 1 year. Last week, the U.S. sanctioned Lam and other top Hong Kong and Chinese officials deemed responsible for the destruction of the city's political rights. Now, in the larger picture, the Chinese Communist Party under President Xi Jinping has learned it doesn't need tanks, it doesn't need machine guns to stop a vibrant political movement. In Hong Kong, the party has used repressive police action and the hammer of law to crush dissent, a phenomenon known in Chinese tradition as rule by law rather than the rule of law. The new national security law circumvented Hong Kong's traditionally independent courts and established a secret police, quietly bringing in state security officials from mainland China to convert a hotel into a new Hong Kong headquarters. The vaguely worded law criminalizes sedition, terrorism, separatism, and collusion with foreign powers, defining them broadly and imposing harsh penalties. Critics have said the vague wording is intentional since It pressures people to practice sweeping self-censorship to avoid crossing unknown lines. Observers abroad have expressed anger and profound concern at China's latest moves in the city. The Foreign Correspondents Club of Hong Kong, the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China, an organization comprised of current lawmakers from around the world who aim to counter China's authoritarianism. At the same time, many Hong Kongers have not given up. On July 12, more than 600,000 Hong Kong residents cast votes in a primary for the upcoming election, despite official warnings the campaigns might be illegal under the new law. Tuesday editions of Apple Daily, Lie's newspaper, flew off the stands in the early morning as city residents rushed to buy it after the police raided the newspaper's offices. What we need to pay attention to is something called Article 38 in the National Security Law. It states that the law applies to everyone, everywhere. The indictment in late July of U.S. citizen Samuel Chu, who resides in the U.S., for collusion with foreign forces, in other words, Chu's own government, heralds the opening of a dark chapter, both for Hong Kong and for the world. The world is polarizing in very obvious ways. It is not changing. China has never been our friend, always has been our enemy. These other folks have never really been our friends. And as time goes on, we're going to find out that we're pretty much standing alone. I don't even think mainstream Europe will stand with us if push came to shove. Great Britain, perhaps, but not Europe. Why? It's the way it has to be. The world is polarizing around good and evil. And the Bible indicates there's coming a day when there will be open war. And there will be a Western leader who rises to the fore to defend Israel and to drive back all these other people. 50, 100 years ago, it was hard to imagine. Today, we can not only imagine it, we see it coming together. We know the names of the people involved. It's only a matter of time. One trigger could set this whole thing off. Of course, the Bible says when it is going hot and heavy, the church will already be gone. That's how close it is. Are you ready?